Colonel Douglas Macgregor, he was asked by judge, do you think Israel is planning an attack on Egypt? This is the response he gave. This is a bombshell. Before I play the video and explain more to you, just to remind you, most of my viewers are not subscribed. Consider subscribing if you're not yet. Take a listen.
I think the Israelis, and first of all, remember, their general staff is very competent. The people at the top of the Israeli Defense Force, though they may not always express their views publicly, privately, they make their views very well known, and they are not happy with this overextension. Many of them are greatly concerned about it because they understand that everything depends upon our unconditional support for whatever they want to do. And they also know that their force as it is today is exhausted. But they're looking at Egypt, and they're really very concerned about General Sisi's longevity. Frankly speaking, General Sisi, who rules Egypt, was installed in large part by us against the Muslim Brotherhood, which is led by Mr. Erdogan in Turkey, that a man named Morsi had led to victory in Egypt. And we decided that it was not in the interest of the United States, Israel, and the West for a member of the Muslim Brotherhood to rule Egypt.
Let me just stop you for a second. When you say led to victory, you mean he won an election.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And we were unhappy with the outcome. And ultimately, there was a coup for all intents and purposes, subsequently validated or legitimated in the future by another election that obviously was tainted. But the bottom line is that we got what we thought we wanted, and we have bankrolled General Sisi and his regime. Without the money that pours into Egypt, not only would there be general unrest, but he'd have difficulty paying his armed forces, particularly the army. He's not the only one. That's also true for King Abdullah in Jordan. But right now, his position in Egypt, that is Sisi's, is very fragile. And the public, the millions of people who live in that country, it's almost 100 million people, are desperately unhappy at the failure of Egypt and the other Arab states to raise any hand whatsoever against Israel in view of its mass murder and expulsion campaign in Gaza.
These dictators, guys, must go. These dictators, the Assad, he fell. That dictator, that butcher fell. It is time for Sisi to go. It is time for Sisi, for Abdullah to go. Because as long as they are in power, Muslims will be slaughtered. They would not care a tad bit, not at all. They will rather help our enemies to slaughter us. This is who we have put as our leaders. They belong to the trash. That's where they should go. They should not be ruling over us. They should not be our leaders. Because of these leaders, we were slaughtered. The people of Gaza were slaughtered. It is not the failure of UN, United Nations, what they will do, what the non-Muslims country would do, how far they can go. They have their own limitations. They do not have to care about the people of Gaza the way Muslims should. So the reason we are seeing these children and women getting blown up in Gaza, it is because of these dictators who are ruling over us. People like Assad, people like this Sisi, people like Jordan, Abdullah, and all of these dictators are sitting and allowing our enemy to kill us. So it is time, guys, if you are from Egypt, if you are from Jordan, rise up, demand justice. The West had this propaganda war against the Muslims, that somehow the Muslims are jihadis, they're bringing a Sharia to the Western countries. They cornered us. They cornered us to the point where we have forgotten how to even defend ourselves. And this is unacceptable. If they go with this propaganda that Muslims are bad, they're terrorists and this and that, then we must stop this propaganda. We must not care about what they have to say. As Allah said in the Quran, don't fear their fear. Fear me. We fear Allah. We don't fear what the West is talking about, how they view the Muslims, because we have cared so much so that right now we have forgotten how to even defend our lands. We have no right to take up arms against those genocidal maniacs. So these people, this Egypt, this guy should go as soon as possible. And this is what Colonel Douglas Macgregor, he is suggesting. He's saying that, yeah, of course, this is the time that the Muslim Brotherhood will rise up. The people of Egypt will rise up. And Israel at the same time is planning an attack on Egypt too, because these Zionists, these monsters, they are now afraid that if Egypt falls into the hand of the Muslims, the Muslim Brotherhood in this case, then they will take over Suez Canal. And that would be the end of Israel's economy. The Muslims will have hand on the Egyptian military, the weapons, everything they possess today. And this is not looking good for the Zionist state. They want to destroy the Muslims. So they want to actually preempt Egypt, destroy its leadership, and get rid of Sisi, the weak leader. Even for the Zionists, he's a weak leader now. And then the Yahudi will try to control and put somebody in his place who would be pleasing these Yahudis, these Zionists, who will be giving them a free pass to commit another genocide in West Bank and more genocide in other countries, in Muslim countries. It is time for us, guys, to really wake up.
So I think that they're worried that he could be removed. You get a new government that is probably either the Muslim Brotherhood or close to it, and then the Suez Canal falls into the hands of people who are ostensibly enemies of Israel, the United States, and the West. And so there is some thinking going on about intervening in Egypt to seize the canal if it looks as though Sisi is going to be run out of power. Now, we all know that we went through something similar to this in 1956 during the Suez Crisis against Nasser, and Eisenhower intervened, put an end to it. The Israelis were forced back into Israel. The British and the French had to withdraw their forces. But now we have a different set of circumstances. Today, the Israel lobby controls the United States government, and it also wields powerful influence inside London and Paris. And it's not impossible that the French and the British could be persuaded to compensate for the lack of Israeli ground force in seizing control of the canal. This, of course, would be adding insult to injury on a strategic scale that's hard to even describe. The rest of the world will be horrified. This would represent a complete revision and return to imperialism and colonialism.
Yeah, that's exactly what the plan is for the Zionist monsters. Because when the Syria the government of the butcher Assad fell, immediately they seized. Or they tried to actually not seizing power in this case, but they destroyed Syrian army bases, all the military bases. Why? Because the Yahudi, the Zionists, they were totally terrified that somehow if this Syrian army, the new government there, they have their hands on these weapons that will be used against Israel in the future. And so when Egypt will fall, that the exact same thing will happen. Now, then the Zionists will have to deal with not just the Egyptian military weapon and all the missiles they have and huge army they have. They will also have to deal with the Suez Canal. And so for the Zionists, the problem is multifold with Egypt. It is not like Syria, where they had to deal with only the weapons of Bashar al-Assad. Now in Egypt, they will have to deal with so many other problems and challenges, and so it will be a blatant imperialism on display for the whole world to watch.
Wow. How unstable is NATO today, and how would that instability be exacerbated if the United States or Germany withdrew?
First of all, without Germany, there is no NATO. Let's be frank. Germany is a nation of 80 million. In economic and military terms, it is indispensable to the survival of not only NATO, but the European Union. And I would argue that both organizations are in very, very fragile condition. NATO.
Yeah, NATO is done. NATO has humiliated themselves in Russia. I will not play the video about NATO. We'll talk about NATO in a separate video, make some commentary on that.